This is the Auto BT260, and basically, fuck, stupid piece of shit. Yo, what is up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. Homie Hector here. Today we got this 2008 Toyota Camry, and the customer's complaint was not really a complaint, it's more like a concern. Customer's concern is that his horn doesn't work. So as you can see, nada. Now this is one of those things that you really don't think about until you need it and you don't have it. So I saw this car about a month ago for some AC concerns, and I told him about his horn. He said, nah, don't worry about it, not a big deal. Well, the other day got into a little fender bender because he couldn't warn the other person that was coming towards him that he was about to hit him. So he yelled and boom. Why? Because he didn't have a horn. So it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. All right, 2008 Toyota Camry. We got about 103,352 on the odometer, and the horn doesn't work. Now, one thing that I noticed was right now that I drove the car in, when I turn the key on, I can actually hear the horn. Did you hear that? Okay, so the horn works, but the horn doesn't work. So my next step is to get a wiring diagram, get some information on the horn system, and then we're gonna go do some testing to figure this one out. Here's a diagram of the horn circuit. Now looking at it, it's a pretty basic circuit. So we have our horns down here. We got a left horn and a right horn. One's a high pitch, one's a low pitch. These horns are grounded on the body. So that means that these two wires right here should be a power. They get a power from this horn fuse, 10 amps, which gets its power from the horn relay. So we got a power up here and we got a power over here. This is a control side of the relay. So if there's a power up here, this should be a ground. So on this black wire, we should be getting a ground, which comes from the horn switch right here. When we're pressing the horn switch on the steering wheel, we don't hear the horns. But when we turn the key on, we hear the horns. So that right there tells us that we got a ground down here, we got a power over here, the fuse is good, and the relay is working. Now, if we didn't hear the horns, we wouldn't know all of this. So right now, with the information that I know, what can be wrong with the horn? We can have an open in this black wire, we can have an open in this white wire, we can have a bad spiral cable, also known as the clock spring, or we can have a bad horn switch. So we can do a lot of testing here at the relay. Obviously, we don't need to check for powers, but we're going to do that anyways. We're going to check the control side, and we're going to check the load side. We're going to check the fuse, and we're going to come to the horns and do some checks there. Not that we need to do all this testing with the information that we already have, but let's just test the entire circuit since we're already here. All right, so let's go under the hood, and let's go find all of these components. All right, so here's the fuse box for this 2008 Toyota Camry. This is where the fuse and the relay are located. Now the fuse for the horn is this guy right here next to the 15 amp fuses. That 10 amp fuse should have power when we're pressing the horn switch if the relay is activated. You can see that's the horn fuse right there, 10 amps. And we have 5 relays over here. But if you look at the diagram, none of the relays are labeled horn relay. The relay for this horn circuit is actually built inside the fuse box. Right now what we can do is go to this horn fuse, press the horn switch, and see if we get power. My suspicions are that we won't. Remember, when we turn the key on, we heard the horn. So if I turn the key on, then we should have power at this 10 amp fuse. So let's go ahead and try that real quick. Alright, so we got the 10 amp fuse here, which is for the horn. I'm going to check for power here when the horn's being pressed down, and we should get power. Right now we have a ground. This ground right here is coming from the horns. So where the horns ground on the body, that ground goes through the horn itself and comes back all the way to the fuse and makes its way back to the relay. When the relay is energized, this fuse should get power and we should hear the horns. So right now we're going to press the horn switch and we're going to see what we have here. Press the horn switch.
Pressing.
You're holding it down?
Yes.
Okay, nothing here. Now if you remember in the beginning when we turned the key on, we heard the horn for a quick second. So we're going to try that and see what we have here at the fuse. Alright, turn the key on. Do it again. Alright, I don't know if you caught that. It happens pretty quick, but there's a voltage change. So that means that the relay is activating, power is making it out the relay, through the fuse, and out to the horns. So when we turn the key, we have power at this fuse, but it's only for a split second. What I'm going to do right now is show you what it looks like with a test light, because I think it's going to be easier to see.
Okay.
Key off and key on. There it is. Okay. So we have power when we're turning the key on and we hear the horn. So that means that the relay is working, the fuse is working, the circuit from here to the horns is good. Now I know in the beginning I said that we were going to do all our testing here at the relay, but the relay is built into the fuse box. We could do that, but we have to take this apart, find the wires that go to that relay, and do it that way. One quick test we can also do with this tester is provide our own power from the fuse. So check it out. We'll touch the fuse. So right now we have a ground that's coming from the horns. If I give it power, I should hear the horns work. So this means that everything from the fuse out to the horns is working. So now we can go back inside the car, do some tests at the horn switch and the clock spring, and figure out the problem. Alright, so back inside the car, we got two things that we got to check. One is this horn switch, and two is the clock spring that sits right behind it. One of those two can be a problem, or we can have a wiring issue. Now, one thing that I'm noticing, so the horn doesn't work, and we also have this volume down, volume up. Now if we look at the radio, I'm going volume down and nothing's happening. Volume up, we got no steering wheel control, we got no horn, and cruise control. I don't see a cruise control light. Let me go ahead and turn the key on again. I don't see that cruise control light anywhere. So right now, most likely with everything we've tested and the symptoms we're having here, most likely our horn switch is good and our problem could be the clock spring, but we still gotta prove it. So I'm gonna take the steering wheel apart and do some tests at the clock spring. All right, let me show you something interesting that I found in the process of removing this clock spring. So in order to get this off, you have to turn the wheel this way, 90 degrees, so that you can access that screw right there, and turn it 90 degrees this way so that you can access that screw right there. Now your clock spring lives right there in the middle. Now one way you can test your clock spring is, if your horn doesn't work, move it a little bit, put it there, and do that throughout the whole 360 degrees. All right, you keep doing that and you're gonna find a bad spot in your clock spring. Now in the process of doing that, I did a 180 and this is what I saw. That connector right there is unplugged. Now if you ask me, I think that's a connector for the clock spring. Now the question is, why is it unplugged? This customer just bought this car. He said it had a couple issues, but it ran pretty good. So I'm gonna plug it back in and we're gonna find out why it's unplugged. All right, so just two screws and this bottom cover comes off, and now we have access to the bottom of the steering wheel. So you can see all the wires right there. Now if we go to the other side, this is the connector we were looking at. Now the question is, why is it unplugged? Did somebody do some work here and forget to plug it back in, or did they unplug it on purpose? I'm gonna plug it back in, hopefully nothing blows up, and we're gonna find out. But this right here is a connector for the clock spring. So now let's try the horn and see if it works.
Is it fixed?
No way.
Can I honk it?
You wanna try it?
Yeah.
There it is. Stop, you're gonna wake up Logan. Okay, so now the horn works. But the question still is, why was this connector unplugged? So what I'm gonna do right now is start the car and look for anything unusual. Nothing on the dash, everything looks the same. I got the parking brake on, I got the door open, I don't have my seatbelt on, and that TPMS light was already on. Now let's see if this volume knob actually works. There we go. All right, what about this cruise control right here? If you look at the dash, there's the cruise control light right there on the top right. Beautiful.
But wait, there's more.
All right, let's say this connector wasn't unplugged. What would you do then? All right, now this is a 12-pin connector with 7 wires on it. Now, if we look at the diagram, pin number 8 is a white wire that goes out to the fuse box to ground the relay. So on pin number 8, we should have a ground when we press the switch. Okay, now this might be a little hard to see, but there's a 7 on the top left and there's a 12 on the top right. That second wire from the top is a white wire. That's pin number 8. So if we back probe it, we should have a ground when we press the horn switch. I'm actually going to disconnect it, and I'm just going to touch the pin because I don't want the horn to be sounding all the time. Okay, so I put a little wire on pin number 8, making sure that it doesn't touch any of the other pins. So when I press the horn switch, I should have a ground on this pin. Alright, so there's the ground from the horn switch out the clock spring. And now we're going to do the test from the clock spring out to the relay, the fuse, and out to the horns. So on the connector, it's pin number 8, the white wire, which is right here on top. I'm just going to front probe it. And we got 12 volts right there. We got to give it a ground. And as you can see, everything from here out to the horn is working. Alright, so I guess that's going to be it for this 2008 Toyota Camry horn not working because the clock spring was unplugged. Now we could have started here, seeing that nothing on the steering wheel was working, and then we could have got into this a lot faster. But what if all this was working? Then what would you do? So we ran through the whole circuit logically and found the problem. 2008 Camry, horn not working, connector unplugged. I'll see you on the next one.
I just went in there, and Hector is gonna be running 3 Honda Civics with spoon engines.